Hello and welcome back to the Adrian Project. Hello. Many thanks for choosing to click on my thumbnail and to watch my content. All very much appreciated. Right, if you didn't see part 5 of our build, I will link it up there somewhere. So if you want to play catch up, you can do. So if you can remember in that video, I've set you all a little bit of homework to do if you're following this build along yourself, and that was to get your Spitfire to this point in the construction. Now if you remember, I told you not to put the little greeblies on, you know, like the radiator intakes and air intakes and whatever, antenna, mast, your wheels and the like. Two reasons for this. Reason one, we've got quite a large area to paint on there, and it's going to be made a lot easier if you've just got the flat surface. You're not going over lumps and bumps and having to go work your way around that way. And of course the second way reason, because little things like your pitot tube there and your antenna mast there, they are just so easily knocked off and broken, same as your tail wheel as well. So it's always best to get everything done before you glue those into place, and it reduces you know, the risk of breaking your model parts. Okay, so what we need to do now, we're going to start with the painting. Rule of thumb with painting your models, you start with your light colours first and you work your way up to paint your dark colours. That is because if you're going to put a light colour on top of the dark colour, it is going to give yourself a major headache trying to get the shading right and everything. It's just so easier doing it that way around. So if we could see what we're going to do, let's start off with the underside of the Spitfire. And as you can see, for the most part, we're using paint colour number 90, but we've also got this half of the wing there, which is in colour number 33, I think it is, which is black. So what we're going to do, we're going to get this number 90 and we're going to paint all over the underside of the aircraft, including the part that is going to be black. Thinking behind this is that colour will act as a sort of undercoat primer for your black, so your black will actually go on a lot better because there's already some paint there. Because if you can remember when we were doing the cockpit, we're painting onto the raw plastic, because we're doing this build as though all the tools you have is what you get with this set. So as you can remember, we're painted on the raw plastic, and it does take 2, 3, even 4 coats to get a decent coverage, because it looks a bit ropey when you do the first one because you've got no primer down. Okay, so enough of a waffle, so let's get on. So there we go, we've got this paint number 90, which we will open. There we go. Very careful opening these because they are really stiff, and as always you give your paint a good stir because it's going to be, all the components of it are all going to be separated and glued together. So as you stir it and stir it round, you'll notice it does in these parts actually change colour, and it's going to the colour that you want. Okay, so that looks like that. Now again, like we did before, we're going to be using little pot that it came with as a mixing pot, because we are going to water it down a little. Right, let me just get some kitchen roll. Sorry about this, should have got some before I started. Let's just wipe this stick on there. Okay, so using the paintbrush, we can put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 blobs of paint. Let's just close that so we don't knock it over. So you want to water this paint down a little. So I'd use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dollops of water. Just mix it all in. Try and get it to a milky consistency. Let's get the excess off, and then we can start. Now, in the ideal world, when you get to painting and modelling properly, and you've got more things, you'd be using a flat wide brush if you're going to be brush painting to do this part, but you only got the paintbrush that comes with a set. So what I'd do, I'd use the edge of the brush like that. As you can see, oops, there we go. We're getting some of the colour down onto there already. Now, it's like we said before, don't panic, because this first coat is going to look awful. So, as you can see, so what we're going to be doing is slowly building the colour up. This is going to take, like I say, at least 2 or 3 coats before we get to where we want to. Now, it's like I say, if you look at the diagram there, this wing that I'm painting right now will be painted black, but it's like I say, if we just paint that anyway, this colour will act like a primer, and it'll mean that your black will go down a lot better. As you can see, here we go. Now we've got these parts there, like indentations where other parts will fit on. You don't have to paint those bits because your part's going to fill it in anyway, and you want a raw plastic without paint on, and that will help the glue do its job properly, so it's not having to eat through lots and lots of paint. Okay, right, when we get to the propeller, you'll try and be really careful not to get any on your propeller. Don't worry if you do, because you can just use a little dab of black on there for touch-ups. Okay, it doesn't matter if you go over. Now there's a seam line just there on the front of the nose, that's where your paint will go up to for this colour. It doesn't matter if you go over it, because the colours on the top part of the fuselage are darker than this, so they will cover it. We've got to try and get a straight line on that as well. So here we go. It's not taking too long to do actually. So You want to keep it thin, even coat, as even as you can. It's not going to be too long before you've got your first coat of paint on. As I said before, your first coat always looks a bit ropey, so don't panic. Just remember, thin your paint down. Don't be tempted to put too much paint on your brush either, because that will just give you thick blobs and it'll end up streaking. There we go. A nice thin even coat. Oops. Uh-oh, that's on the table. Let's wipe it off quick before it dries, or Claire will kill me. Hey! There we go. So, as you can see, perhaps a little bit more water in this one. It is drying out just a little bit. So, get the excess off the brush. Do the vertical stabilizers at the back. So like I say, it doesn't matter if you get a little bit onto the body, because the paint that you're going to go on there will cover it, because it is darker than the underside of this one. There we go. Right, just trying to keep his fingers away from the paint. You don't want to keep putting your fingers into the paint. So that goes along there, bottom of the aircraft. As I said, doesn't matter if you go up onto the side of the fuselage just a little bit, because your other colours will cover it, because they are darker than the colour that you're using right now. And as we can see, almost got the first coat on. There we go. And like I said already, don't worry about it looking patchy, because this is only your first coat. Just make sure we get a little on those edges there, along the edge there. Bottom half of the wing, it's going to be that colour. Just make sure you've got your edges done. Now, depending on how well your particular kit has gone together, you may not get any seam lines showing. Some of them, you may have some really fine lines showing, a few gaps. Don't worry about that. This is your first kit, it's your first attempt, so that's nothing to worry about. So if you think you're just going to continue modelling, that's when we can start and look at getting rid of gaps and seam lines. We just need to go around the inside of there. Now you've already painted inside your wheel well, that'll be the same colour anyway, so that's not going to be too much of a difficulty to do. There we go. Get inside that wheel well painted. Just go over any little bits that you've really missed. Shouldn't be too many. There we go. So there we go. That's the first coat on the underside of the Spitfire, all painted. Like I say, don't worry, it looks patchy. It will look patchy. That is mainly due to the fact that we've not used a primer. So like I say, that's something you'll learn about if you decide you want to carry on doing modelling as a hobby. So put that one to dry. Just leave that to dry for about, I'd say, let it dry for at least 45 minutes. And don't forget that you've got these little parts on here as well. I think I need a little touch more paint, because you've got the bits that you were supposed to have added on that you've left on the sprue. Just get some paint into your palette. There we go. Close that up. There we go. A couple of dabs of water just to thin it down. Consistency of milk side, and then any parts that goes on the underside of the aircraft want painting as well. So we've got these air intakes, I think they are, and little radiator things. Any little part. It's that way around, isn't it? It will go on to the bottom of your aircraft. Don't panic if you forget to do this bit, because you can always paint them when you've glued it on. So there we go. And then we've got this wheel undercarriage covers here as well. There we go. We've got this part here. This is an air intake on this part. There we go. The aerial we're going to leave, because that's going to be a different colour. Then we've got this air intake here as well, nearly forgot that. I'm going to put that flat because it has broken away from the sprue. So let's get that painted with our colour for the inside of the Spitfire. It's wobbling about. It's not going to be. Do the edges as well. So I say anything that you miss, it's easily touched up. Thicker. Okay. Then of course we have this tail wheel as well. That's going to need painting. Really fine fiddly bit there. So that is all. There's little bits that we've left off painted. There we go. And as before, you set them to one side, and I would say let it the paint dry 45 minutes at least. Don't forget to clean your brush out every time. So there we go. That's the first coat done. So when I come back again, I will have put at least another 2 coats on there, so you can see what it looks like, and then we can move on to the top. Okay, so we're now in the following day. It's been 24 hours, and as we can see, the paint on the bottom is all nice and dry. If you do it, like I say, thin your paints, do it in thin layers, then you're not going to see hardly any brush strokes in your paintwork at all. Now, so if we look at the back of the box, we can see that I think it's the port wing on the underside is painted black. So, and as you can see, it's a straight line running down the middle. Now, you can do this 2 ways. You can either mask it off using masking tape, or if you've got a really steady hand, you can do it freehand. Me, I have got jelly hands, so I'm going to have to mask it off just to get the nice line. Now, I am going to cheat just a little bit here, because I was going to use ordinary decorators masking tape, but I've had a look. I thought I had some and I didn't, so I'm going to be using this proper modelling tape that you can buy from the shop. Just a few words of advice now. If you're going to be using decorators masking tape, before you put it on to your model, put the sticky side down across your palm and take it off, put it back down and take it off again. That's to remove some of the adhesive on the tape, because sometimes it can be a little too strong, and when you come to remove it from your model, it can remove your paintwork, and also it can be a little messy as well. What I wouldn't advise using is sellotape. Do not use sellotape, because the adhesive on sellotape is far too strong, it's far too messy, and you're just going to end up ruining your model. So if you haven't got any masking tape, I suggest you'll have to try and do it freehand, or probably put a piece of paper or something along the middle where you've got to mask off something to try and give yourself a straight line. Okay, so like I say, we've got to mask off. If you notice, I put the little greeblies on there because they're all painted, they're all ready, but this has got to go, the line has got to go across that air intake there, and it's got to be painted on that, and the pitot tube as well. So we're going to be masking that off before we paint it. So rather than sit here wasting time, I'm going to go away, mask it off, and when I come back we can get on with the painting. Okay, so as you can see, we've got it masked off. I've thinned the paints down again, so as before we can just start on the wing, and like I said before, it's nice thin coats and we build the colour up. Now, because you've already painted this wing with the colour before, it does act like a primer, so you'll probably find that your black paint will cover slightly better than before. It's still going to look a bit rough for the first coat, always does. So like I say, don't panic about it. Nice even strokes. You don't try putting too much paint on your brush and try and get it all done in one fell swoop, because it'll just go on thick and nasty, and you will see lots and lots of brush strokes if you do it that way. So as you can see, once again it's covering. First coat looking a bit ropey, but like we say, we don't worry about that. I've used my paint up already, surely. Go. Small paint on here. That's better. There we go. So I've said before, your first coat's always going to look a bit rough. Don't panic about that, because you're going to cover. It's going to be take a good couple of coats to get the desired coverage. Right, trying his best not to get black inside there, so we don't need the black paint in the wheel well if you can avoid it. So when you come up, if you're doing the masking tape way of doing it, when you do come up to the tape, don't paint up against the tape. Start on the tape and move off it. That way you're going to limit the risk of paint bleed under your tape, which is what you don't want. So here we go. We're coming up to the tape now. Let's get around this bit here. So I say, don't worry that your first coat is looking a bit rough. It always will, because we're building it up gradually. Because if you remember, when we used the first colour, it looked really ropey, didn't it? So right, we've come to the tape. So start on the tape and brush across, brush off it. Don't brush towards the tape, because like I say, you'll just end up forcing paint if the tape isn't down properly. You will force it under your tape. You don't want that. Sometimes it will bleed under your tape, so you will have to do minor touch-ups, but it shouldn't be too difficult. Say we'll go across the edge of the wing there. Sorry for the sniffles again, it's just one of those days where you get up and I've got the sniffles. So here we go. So we're going off the tape and onto the model. Off the tape, onto the model. That's your mantra, that's what you've got to remember. Just do the parallel way there a minute. I've got to do the edge of that there. So there we go. Get in there. So like I say, yes, it is looking rough. It's because it's the first coat, so don't panic. Don't panic about it, Mr. Manrin. So when you're happy you've got, needs covering there a bit more. That bit is your first coat. the edge of that air intake or whatever it is. So there we go, just run across the edge there. Just check your edge. You could use the seam line where the wing halves join together as your gauge of how far to go up. So there we go, that's the first coat of paint done. Yeah, it is rough, looks awful. Like I say, don't worry about it, it's the first coat. So we can now set that to one side to dry before we put on a second coat, possibly a third, I don't know. We just have to see how the coverage goes. So I'm going to have to wait, do another couple of coats and then come back to you. Okay, so I'll see you in the blink of an eye. Okay, so while I'm just waiting for that first coat of black to dry, I want to talk to you about your clear parts. Okay, so first things first, painting. Now, when you come to paint the frames on the glass, if you look from on the back of the box, you can see that they have done it, got the camouflage in green going up over the frame of the cockpit. So that's very nice, so you don't have to worry about the one colour. So what I do is go around very carefully, thinning your paint as normal and going around all very carefully around all the parts there that have the metal frame, the window frame for the cockpit on. Now you're going to be worried about getting paint on the glass. Don't be. When the paint is dried, what you can do, if you get a piece of the sprue there, just sharpen it with your craft knife. You can actually clean up all the paint that where it shouldn't be, and just scratch it off lightly, and it will all come away and it will leave a nice fine good finish. Nice fine good finish, that's awful English, sorry about that. When it comes to fitting the canopy to the aircraft, this kind of glue isn't recommended really. If you've got some super glue or some white craft glue or an all-purpose glue that sticks anything like Yoo-hoo, I would use that in sparing amounts. If you haven't got any of those glues and all you've got is the glue that came with the kit, the reason why it's not great is because that glue, it fogs up the clear glass, because with it being a hot glue, as I mentioned before, you do get fumes from it and it steams it up and it's not great. So what I do, I take a very small amount of that model glue, I put a bit on the back and a little bit on the front, and then I'd wait before I put the cockpit glass on. Just wait till it's gone tacky, give it a couple of minutes and then put your cockpit on top. But like I said, use a very small thin amount, also you're just going to fog up your cockpit glass. Okay, let's get back to our normal programming. So there we go, we've now applied 3 coats of paint to that to get the finish that you can see there. I know this is a starter set, but one of my main gripes with this set is that they only give you this one brush, and it is only a small brush like that. And normally when you're doing large areas like that, you'd use a wide flat brush that would cut down on brush strokes and whatever, make the job a lot quicker and a lot easier. But like I say, I'm doing the build as though this is your very first time doing a model kit. So that is, if we can get that a little bit closer, that's the finish that we're going to get. As we can see, took the tape off and we've got a relatively straight edge. And like I say, if you paint from the tape onto the model, you're not going to get any bleed under there. So there we go. I'm going to go away and let that dry overnight before I do anything else. So for the next part of the model build, this is your homework. So what I want you to do, I want you to go away and you're going to do the camouflage on the top. Don't worry, I'm going to give you tips on how to do this. So as before, where we did the number 90 colour on underneath, and we painted the whole of the underneath of the wings, that bit of the fuselage and the tail, the vertical stabilizers there. So onto this part, you're going to be using the brown and the green. Now the brown is the lighter of the two colours. So what you're going to be wanting to do is paint the whole of the upper surfaces of the wings there in the brown, and all the fuselage. Everywhere that you haven't painted, paint it brown. Now you're going to want to use the techniques we've done before. I've showed you how to thin your paints. Don't panic when your first coat goes on and it's a bit rubbish, because it always does. So you're going to want at least 3 coats, thin coats of the brown onto there. And then when it comes to doing your green part of the camouflage, you can do that freehand. Just use this back as a guide. Come up with your own camouflage if you want to. You don't have to stick to that, but I suggest you stick to what they've showed you there. It's going to be a lot easier than trying to come up with your own scheme. Again, as well, be careful about getting paint onto that bit. If you've got some, like I say, some tape, I would mask that part off there to stop you getting the green and the brown onto that bottom part. But if not, just be really careful. There is a line along the bottom there. You can follow that, and that is your line, your demarcation line between that colour paint and then camouflage on top. Same on the bottom. It's just that little panel line across there. You use that as your guide. And there you go. And like I say, I've told you how to paint your canopy. Just for a quick recap, thin paint again. It's going to take a good 3 or 4 coats. Just take your time using the tip of the brush, follow around the framework, any paint that you get onto the glass. Wait for the paint to dry, then you can just scrape it off using a bit of sharpened sprue. And I've also told you to be wary about what you glue it on with. So there we go, that's what we've come up to. So the next video that will be coming up, I will be showing you the final placements of the decals, and then you will have your finished model. So hope you can join me for that one. There is one other thing I've just remembered I nearly forgot to tell you about. So if when you've completed painting your underneath of your aircraft and you want to be putting the undercarriage on, and you're having yours wheels down so you can stand your model on it, if you take a look at your wheel there, it has got a slight flat spot. It's not a round wheel. This is to represent weight on wheels, and that needs to go flat on the surface that you're standing your model on. So when you come to put your undercarriage on, I'd glue the wheel on to the undercarriage bit there, then glue that into the bottom of the aircraft, and while the glue is still pliable, just turn your wheel so you've got that little flat spot there. So you're giving it the impression of weight on wheels. And that's the end of today's video. I hope you all enjoyed that one. Please remember, if you haven't done so already, to subscribe to my channel. It'd be very much appreciated. And also don't forget to ring that little notification bell. Also, if you've got Facebook, you can follow me at Adrian Bow Project. And if you've got a Twitter account, you can follow me at Project Bower. So, with all that in mind, I'd like to thank you all again for watching, and it's to see you all again on the next episode of the Adrian Bow Project.